Okay, Leonard Lang here. Let's see if we can save the CRV program. And I'm going to talk about AB 2020, which was the original bill in 1986 that started this program. And here we are now in 2020. So let's do a quick review. In the beginning, I was there. A lot of people had come into a new program, the Division of Recycling within the Department of Conservation. This was no Cal Recycling at this time. And they're all getting assigned to different areas, and we're all trying to figure out what we need to do to make the program work as recyclers and processors, and them as a state. From the beginning, the CZs asked for subsidy. It was kind of a weird thing written into the statute, and didn't say much. I wouldn't have even assumed that it meant what it did, but handling fee sites were not handling fee sites at the time. They were subsidized, called convenience incentive payment, and they started getting about $1,100 a month. For the company that I think got this into the program, Envipco, it meant that we charged Californians to pay a Virginia company to build machines that it did not have, to send them out here to give us bad service. Okay. But convenience zones were everywhere. They were across the street from each other. There was no limitations. There was no requirement of distance between these things. So they were all getting a subsidy. Californians Against Waste gets all upset and says, we're going to stop this. Only one per zone, blah, blah. And that's how it evolved. Now, recyclers and processors back at this time, we're trying to learn how to deal with these different materials. Never dealt with plastics, never dealt with glass. All this is new to us, and we get started. Almost from the beginning, though, the law begins to change. And I got a pretty inside view, because not only was I advising as the member of the Legislative Committee of ISRI, not only was I advising the ISRI lobbyist, company I was with, Allen Company, we hired our own lobbyist, Denny Carpenter, and I was advising him. So I was involved with this from a number of different aspects. But almost from the beginning, audits and enforcement were a problem, a big problem. The management of that area was not qualified. They were not auditors. They didn't know what auditing did. They didn't like auditing. They worked to eliminate or to neuter, castrate auditing, until, fast forward today, you won't find an auditing department within the Division of Recycling. There is no auditing. It's only enforcement. It's a biased system to go find problems that may mean nothing, may be insignificant. All right. Back then, I had Chuck Calderon introduce a bill. It would have forced audits to be done by qualified auditors that followed government guidelines called the Yellow Book. They don't do that now. They don't even know how to audit, to be honest with you. And enforcement took on its own focus, and that was to eliminate. And they've done a very good job of that. From the beginning, the guy in charge of enforcement and auditing, and he was one man at one point in time until enough of us screamed and they separated the two functions. He tried to enforce and to control by what I call memos to manipulate. And there's been a history of that over the years. I'm going to take us up to 2000 now. More manipulation. A bill went through by Byron Scheer, who was the godfather of the program, SB 1906 as I recall, and it inserted a provision that said participating in the program, being a processor, recycler, is a privilege and not a right. This makes any investment that you put into this program at complete risk. You could lose everything, and very quickly. That had only been used once before in 1993, and it was for something entirely different. This does not respect the investment and the time that these people put into this business, and it needs to come out. 2006, the giveaway came along. I call it the Christmas tree. 3056 AB. It started giving away a lot of money, and The convenience zones, which had been at $2,300 a month max, now went to unlimited, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month. That was also a boon for property owners because all the groceries, stores, property became so valuable that the rents went way up. So we took money from the public and now it's going to property owners. Did they need it? I don't think so. Anyway, so now in 2006, during that giveaway, I also go into consulting. I recognize that recyclers do not understand regulation and it's to their detriment, and I figure I'm going to go out and help educate them. 2008, we had the big financial collapse, and that affected this state too, and it affected the program. There was a cash crunch on the fund. First of all, Gray Davis and Arnold Schwarzenegger had borrowed from the fund tremendously. I think it got up to about $500 million at one point in time. This money sits there and they got to play with it. They got to get it. They got to do something with it that wasn't intended. And they control the process. So cash crunch comes, but fund is too short. There's still a payment due, but it means don't screw the state. No, we're going to screw the recyclers and the processors, and we cut the processing payments. I think it was 25-30%, maybe a little more. But not only did that happen, those that got handling fees, they all got the same cut. Okay, so it was a double whammy to those people. But at the time, they survived. Now, 2013 is an important year. Well, did I say 2010? We created the waste CalRecycle, put conservation from Department of Conservation, put the division into a new organization, got rid of the board and called it a department. And now they have been working to reduce recycling, especially after that cash crunch. So staff is trying to increase or decrease convenience, eliminate recyclers, eliminate recycling to stay within their budget and protect their jobs and hopefully their pensions, things like that. That's how they think. Now, 2013, bad bill. It was a budget bill, and it eliminated commingled. That was one thing it did. It established load limits, much lower than they had been. All this was directly injected by CalRecycle, and there's no control and no visibility on that. These are things that should be public. They created an education and training program that at the time the assistant director blamed on me. I said go out and help recyclers, like auditing is intended to do. Remember, had a bill about 1990? Make those auditors qualified. They go in and do the spot checking, and it's like a health checkup. And if they see something's wrong, they tell you what to do to fix it, and you can move on. But no, we got rid of that function, and everything became an investigation. And really, regulations have not been adopted for that. There's no standards imposed on them. There's no qualifications imposed on them. This has become a hatchet job. If they want to take somebody out, they can do it real easily. Okay, 2014, another budget bill. I think it was 861. It changed the statute of limitations on these audits and investigations from 2 years to 5 years. A terrible change. And because CalRecycle doesn't get anything done, is very lazy, it just gives them more time to come at you and charge more money. And they go back, and the farther they can go back, the farther they can fabricate and create penalties. In 2016 to 2018, we saw the massive closures by Replanet. They bought out Tomra, and they didn't have the bank account that Tomra had, so they started folding locations even after trying to buy a lot. They bought out Nexcycle. I think that was around 80 locations. At one point in time, I figured They were close to 900 locations. When they finally went out of business, it was 281, not 283. Those were two processing centers, and they have nothing to do with recycling. 281 recycling centers. Now we get to 2019, we got a few more bills like we've had over the past few years to increase those subsidies because Replanet was pushing that. Replanet had a lobbyist. Replanet says we're too big to fail, whatever they did. But those bills don't pass and Replanet folds. One bill did pass, and that was Ting, and he gave away $5 million to 5 pilot projects. This is a massive squandering of money. But he got it through, and maybe it'll pay off for San Francisco. We'll find out. This year also, Consumer Watchdog came out with a scathing report. Now, I think about half of it was valid. I think half of it was misleading, and I think they should deal with that and correct that because they'd be good to follow this program in the future. Also, we had the director, Mr. Smithline, resign. Now, I'd been there in November, and I'd asked for the assistant director, Mr. Tauber. I asked for his removal. That's where the problem is in this program. He needs to go. We'll talk about that more in the future. And also, they had on their calendar, it's called rulemaking calendar, to adopt prepayment controls. Now, this is something that the auditor said they should do in 2014 because what they were doing wasn't legal. That hasn't stopped them. They've continued to do it. And if they adopted regulations, they'd probably have to stop doing it, and they don't really want to stop doing it. They want to take recyclers' money and hold it without due process. A violation of the Constitution. Anyway, so no regs. And then finally, I've said that the majority of the locations other than Replanet that have folded have probably been done because of enforcement actions. So we end the year with a sweet lady who called me over the weekend, and she said she had received a letter from Cal Recycle. It was dated the 26th of December, and it forced her to close on the 31st of December. Now, this lady has a convenience zone operation. It's one of two recyclers in that area cover 4 recycling zones, convenience zones. So now there's only one recycler covering those 4 zones, and Cal Recycle did nothing to follow statute to assist this recycler. No, what they do, they came in, they looked at records. Over a year later, they say those records amounted to, I think it was around 28 grand, and that it was all fabricated. It was all false and malicious, fiction. Didn't ask the customers who come there, but they made up a bunch of stupid interpretations to take this woman out, an immigrant, okay? They treat immigrants terribly. Now, what did they do? They violated this woman's rights, and they had been doing it over time. If the auditor were to go in and review this accusation, the auditor would come down against the department. I'm asking anybody who sees this, contact your legislator, ask for an audit of these things. I'm going to bring up some more in the next video of some of the worst atrocities against recyclers that I've seen. And it should be shocking. It is shocking. So here we have the Sunderland, La Crescenta area is not going to have an important recycler, and the charges have been completely fabricated. Now, that means in this system, you are guilty until proven innocent. The recycler can ask for a hearing, but Cal Recycle then decides, well, we'll get around to it when we've got time. The original law said that they had to have it within 30 days to adjudicate before revoking. Now they've gotten around that. They've had the law changed, and they choose not to do that. So now, the recycler wants a hearing. They want it as soon as possible because they've already been forced to close. Their employees are losing money. They're losing money. The community's losing money and convenience. And CalRecycle doesn't give a damn. All right, so we're going to have it in the future. These are things that stomp on the rights of recyclers across this state. You want it fixed? You ask your legislator, your senator, your assembly person, fix this program. Stop the abuse. Have another audit. We want to audit enforcement, certification, and DORIS. They already use their computer system to deny due process. And this, I can give this stuff to the auditor. He can go in. All he's got to do is verify it. We will show bad behavior by this department, by this organization, and it's been systemic. So I ask for your support. Get this information out, share it, save it, subscribe to it, and get all the new updates because they're coming out quickly. Thank you.